Have you ever noticed how a dozen amazing compliments can, so easily slip your mind? But a single insult, or even just one incredibly awkward moment from 5 years ago, will keep you awake at night just staring at the ceiling.
Oh, yeah. It is a completely universal human experience. We collect all those bad memories and put them on display in our mental museum, while the good ones just, kind of get left in the gift shop.
Right. And today we are diving into the biological glitch that makes this happen. We've got a fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive, ranging from evolutionary psychology articles to a Carnegie Mellon study on working memory.
We even have a paper on how AI developers are trying to mimic human memory, which is wild.
It really is. And the goal here isn't just to decode this negativity bias and leave you with the depressing realization that your brain loves bad news. We want to look at actionable advice on how to use daily mindfulness and reframing to actually take control of what stays in your mind.
Exactly. Because it is something you can control once you understand the mechanics of it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where does this obsession with the negative even come from? Why are we wired this way?
Well, to understand how to fix our sticky negative memories, we really first have to understand why our brains developed this seemingly torturous habit in the first place. And it's basically a survival instinct. We inherited it from our ancestors.
So this is from early humans just trying not to get eaten.
Pretty much, yeah. Imagine you're an early human foraging in the wild, right? You come across a bush full of delicious berries. Now, if you get distracted, maybe you're looking at a nice sunset, and you miss out on that bush, what is the actual consequence of that?
I suppose you're just hungry for the night. You just have to find food tomorrow.
Right. But what if you miss the tiger hiding in the brush right next to the berries? You don't have it tomorrow. The cost of missing a positive opportunity is vastly lower than the cost of missing a negative threat.
Ah, so natural selection just aggressively favored the people who were constantly looking for the tiger.
Exactly. The anxious, hyper-vigilant individuals, the pessimists survived to pass on their genes, the extreme optimists who assumed, every rustling bush was just the wind, they got eaten.
Wow.
Yeah, so evolution essentially made pessimism a genetic advantage, and you and I inherited that exact same nervous system.
Okay, that makes sense on a macro level, but what is actually happening under the hood? I want to understand the neurological mechanism that makes the bad stuff stick so hard, while the good stuff just kind of fades away.
So it comes down to a specific triad in your brain. You've got the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the hippocampus. Your amygdala is essentially your brain's threat radar. It is constantly scanning the environment for danger.
Like an early warning system.
Yes. And when a negative event occurs, whether that's a physical threat like a predator or just a modern social threat like your boss sending a really aggressive email, the amygdala sounds the alarm.
It hits the panic button.
It does. And hitting that button triggers a massive release of a neurotransmitter called norepinephrine into your brain. This chemical wash completely alters how your brain processes the moment.
How so?
Well, your prefrontal cortex, which handles your logic and analysis, goes on high alert. And your hippocampus, which is responsible for cataloging and storing your memories, is essentially told to drop absolutely everything and record this exact moment with intense, vivid detail.
Okay, so it's like the brain is a security camera. Normally, walking down the street, it records in blurry 480p to save space on the hard drive.
Yeah.
But the second it senses a threat, norepinephrine hits the switch and it starts recording in 4K resolution.
That is a great analogy. The brain wants a high-definition record of the threat so that if you ever encounter anything even remotely similar in the future, you know exactly how to survive it.
But I have to push back slightly here. Is that intense 4K recording actually accurate? Because I know my memory of certain bad arguments feels incredibly real. Like I can see the look on the person's face. I can hear their exact tone of voice. But is that 4K video actually capturing reality?
That is the million-dollar question right there. And the answer introduces one of the most fascinating phenomena in psychology, which is called flashbulb memories.
Flashbulb memories, like a literal camera flash going off and freezing a scene in time.
Yes, exactly. The term was coined by researchers back in the 70s. Flashbulb memories are these highly vivid autobiographical memories that are formed during a crisis or a highly surprising emotional event.
Oh, like where you were during a major global crisis or when you got sudden life-changing personal news?
Right, and if I ask you about a major news event from your past, you can probably tell me exactly what chair you were sitting in.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you what I was holding in my hand.
And that's not a coincidence. When the amygdala triggers that flashbulb effect, the brain reliably encodes 5 very specific factors about the moment. The first is your spatial location. literally where you were.
Okay, the location makes sense from a survival standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know where the danger happened to avoid that place later.
Exactly. Second is the activity, so what you were doing right before the news hit. Third is the source.
Meaning, who told you the news? Why would the brain prioritize that over other details?
Think about it tribally. Knowing who is a reliable scout for danger keeps you alive. If someone always brings false alarms, you need to remember that. If they bring genuine warnings, you need to trust them.
Oh, that makes total sense.
The fourth factor is affect, which just means the emotional state and expressions of both the person delivering the news and your own internal emotional reaction.
So kind of gauging the severity of the threat by reading everyone's panic level.
Precisely. And the fifth is the aftermath. What happened immediately next? The escape route, the fallout. The brain captures all five of these elements because all of this context could be vital for avoiding the danger next time.
Okay, so if the brain is capturing the where, the what, the who, the emotion, and the aftermath in 4K, that sounds like a highly reliable, bulletproof recording.
It feels reliable. But here is the massive plot twist in the research. Despite feeling incredibly vivid and certain, these flashbulb memories are actually heavily distorted.
Wait, really? But they feel so certain. If you ask me, I would swear to court of law about those details.
I know, but the feeling of certainty is a biological illusion. One of the sources we are looking at highlights a massive study done on memory retention following the September 11th attacks.
Okay, what did they do?
Researchers surveyed hundreds of people within days of the event, recording their flashbulb memories in profound detail. Then they followed up with those same people 1, 5, and 10 years later to see how the memories held up.
Did the 4K footage get corrupted?
It degraded significantly. Now, standard everyday memories decline following something called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, meaning you lose a lot of detail very quickly within a matter of days.
Right, like trying to remember what you had for lunch last Tuesday.
Exactly. Now, flashbulb memories do stick around much longer, but their accuracy still plummets. The study found that after just 1 year, the accuracy of these incredibly vivid flashbulb memories leveled out at only about 60%.
60%? That's practically a failing grade on a test.
It is.
So that argument you keep replaying in your head as you try to fall asleep, there's a 40% chance your brain is essentially writing fan fiction about it.
That's a great way to put it. You are remembering the feeling of the argument, the intensity of the norepinephrine wash, but your brain is likely filling in the gaps of the actual details the words said, the sequence of events. You are holding on to a high-definition lie.
That is wild, and honestly a little bit of a relief.
Yeah.
But it brings up a huge question for me. If holding on to all these vivid, emotional, and partly fictional memories is so cognitively exhausting, why doesn't our brain just hit the delete button?
Yeah.
Why do we keep the bad files?
Well, it turns out the brain actually does delete things. In fact, forgetting isn't a failure of the brain. Forgetting is a crucial feature of human intelligence.
Really?
Yeah. There is a fascinating study from Carnegie Mellon on working memory that completely redefines this. We need to stop thinking about memory as an infinite hard drive and start thinking about your working memory as a battery.
Or like a limited resource.
Yes. Or maybe a better way to look at it is like a hiker carrying rocks in a backpack.
Okay, I like the sound of that. Walk me through the hiker.
So forming memories, especially associative memories where you link complex concepts together, is an active, effortful process. Every detail you try to encode is another rock you put into your backpack. The more rocks you carry, the more your working memory battery drains. When you study a list of items, the more effort you put into remembering the first few, the less stamina you have left for the next items.
So if I spend all my mental energy memorizing the first 3 items on my grocery list, I'm going to totally blank on the rest of it because my backpack is too heavy. I've depleted the resource.
Precisely. And to test this, the Carnegie Mellon researchers used a paradigm called directed forgetting. They gave participants a series of items to look at, but after each item, they gave a specific instruction.
What kind of instruction?
They told the participant either this is a to-be-remembered item, a TBR, or this is a to-be-forgotten item, a TBF.
They literally told them, forget you just saw that. How do you even do that on command?
It's essentially an instruction to drop the rock, to stop putting mental effort into holding it. And what they found was fascinating. When participants were given the TBF command, the instruction to intentionally forget an item, their recall for the subsequent item actually improved significantly.
Wow. So forgetting isn't a glitch in our hardware. It's a battery-saving mode. If we didn't drop some of the rocks, We wouldn't have the mental RAM left to learn anything new.
Exactly. Intentionally abandoning the processing of one piece of information immediately frees up cognitive resources, allowing your working memory to recover and focus on the next task.
This actually connects perfectly to the AI research in our stack. When I was looking at that paper from ArcCiv on how AI chatbots are being programmed, this idea suddenly clicked. The software engineers building these AIs are actually running into this exact biological problem.
They really are. The developers of these large language models realize that if an AI remembers literally every single prompt and piece of context in a long conversation, its performance drops.
It gets bogged down in its own infinite memory.
Right. It becomes incredibly inefficient and computationally expensive. So researchers are currently designing psychological models of memory importance for AI, including a mechanism called retrieval-induced forgetting.
Oh, wait, they're programming the AI to forget things on purpose.
Yes. They are teaching the AI to evaluate how emotionally aroused or surprised a user was by a piece of data, and if it's not deemed highly relevant over time, the AI is instructed to let it decay. They are building a digital Ebbinghaus forgetting curve.
It's just so profound that to make a machine smarter, we have to teach it how to forget. But bringing this back to our own very human, very flawed brains. Now that we know our brains are designed to hoard the bad stuff for survival, and we know that our working memory is a precious, limited resource, how do we actively clear out the negative clutter?
That's the real goal here.
Yeah, like how do we manually hit that to be forgotten button for the memories that are just dragging us down?
This is where we look at some brilliant research from the Beckman Institute. They investigated how we can effectively regulate our emotions when a bad memory creeps up on us. Usually, people rely on one of two incredibly flawed strategies. The first is suppression.
Just aggressively try not to think about it, burying it.
Right. The problem is suppression acts like a pressure cooker. It might work for a minute, but the cognitive load required to actively not think about something is huge. Long term, it significantly increases anxiety and depression.
That makes sense. And what's the second strategy?
The second flawed strategy is called reappraisal.
Reappraisal. Is that the look on the bright side approach? Trying to force yourself to find the silver lining in a bad event?
That's the one. And while this can work sometimes, the Beckman researchers note that it is incredibly exhausting. It drains that working memory battery rapidly because you are actively fighting a powerful emotion and trying to rewrite a narrative.
Okay, so if burying the memory is toxic and looking on the bright side is exhausting, what is the actual solution?
They call it the context shift strategy. When an unwanted negative memory intrudes, the most effective and least exhausting thing you can do is shift your focus away from the emotion and force your brain to focus on the context.
Wait, I'm stuck on this context shift. If I'm thinking about a highly traumatic event, like, say, a really painful funeral, how does forcing myself to remember the context or the color of the chairs actually turn off the grief? Isn't that just a distraction?
It's not just a distraction, it is a physiological rerouting of your brain's resources. When you focus on the grief of the funeral, the amygdala is running the show, pumping out those stress hormones. It is a feedback loop.
Okay.
But when you ask your brain a specific spatial or visual question like, what was the weather like outside the building, or did it smell like rain, you are forcing your brain to engage the visual cortex and the prefrontal cortex to retrieve that data.
Oh, wow. You are literally moving the blood flow and electrical activity away from the emotion center.
Exactly. You are starving the amygdala of attention. By forcing your brain to recall non-emotional, contextual details, you de-escalate the memory. It takes the teeth out of it because you aren't feeding the emotional feedback loop.
That is so practical. And this ties directly into how we can use mindfulness as a daily tool, because obviously our brains don't want to do this naturally. We have to train them.
We do. Mindfulness isn't just about sitting quietly on a cushion. It's about actively managing your brain's resources in real time. The sources outline a few daily practices to build this muscle. First, interrupt the loop.
Interrupt the loop. How do we do that?
When you feel yourself spiraling into a negative associative chain of memories, physically break the pattern. Take a walk, listen to some highly engaging music. You are essentially doing a hard reset on your prefrontal cortex.
Okay, physically interrupt the loop. What else?
The second tool is vital. You have to actively savor the good. Remember earlier when we said negative memories trigger that norepinephrine wash that records in 4K?
The survival instinct, yes.
Well, positive memories, a great cup of coffee, a nice compliment from a coworker, a beautiful sunset, they don't trigger a survival threat. So there is no norepinephrine wash. The brain defaults to recording them in that low-resolution 480p.
Because a sunset isn't going to jump out and eat you, so the brain doesn't care to spend the battery power memorizing it.
Precisely. So to counteract your natural negativity bias, you have to do the work manually. When something good happens, you can't just let it pass. You have to intentionally dwell on it for 10, 20, 30 seconds.
So if someone gives you a compliment, don't just brush it off. Sit there, let it sink in, write it down in a gratitude journal.
Writing it down is one of the most powerful things you can do, because the act of writing forces you to focus your attention, organize the thought, and process it, which manually builds those neural pathways. You are forcing your hippocampus to consolidate that positive moment into long-term storage. You are upgrading the video quality yourself.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. If we connect all these dots from the different studies, when a bad memory hits us, and we use mindfulness to shift our focus to the neutral context, like the weather or the color of the walls, we are starving the emotional part of the memory. We are manually triggering that to-be-forgotten command from the Carnegie Mellon study.
You absolutely are. By withdrawing your emotional attention, you are telling your brain, this is not relevant for my survival right now. You are dropping the rock from your backpack.
It's incredible.
Yeah, you are triggering retrieval-induced forgetting. And by doing that, you are freeing up your brain's limited battery.
You're freeing up the battery for joy, for the things you actually want to remember. You are taking back control of the resources. This has been such a massive paradigm shift. Let's do a quick recap to pull this all together.
Sounds good.
So we started by learning that our negativity bias isn't a character flaw. It is an ancient survival mechanism that kept our ancestors alive. But today, it mostly just gives us unnecessary anxiety. We learned that when the brain hits the panic button, it creates flashbulb memories that feel incredibly real, but are actually highly distorted, often just fan fiction based on our feelings.
Right. And we discovered that your working memory is a battery, not a bottomless hard drive. Forgetting isn't a failure. It is a feature that frees up your mental bandwidth to process new things.
And finally, we learned how to hack the system. When the bad memories attack, don't suppress them, and don't force toxic positivity. Shift your focus to the boring, neutral context of the memory to power it down. And most importantly, manually record your good moments in 4K by taking the time to truly savor them.
It really is a game changer when you put it into practice.
It is. Now, as we wrap up, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. We talked about how AI engineers are currently trying to teach chatbots how to forget so they don't get bogged down. And we talked about how our brains use forgetting to stay optimized.
Yeah.
But what happens to our minds in an era where our smartphones record and remind us of absolutely everything? From every single awkward text message conversation to cloud photos popping up to remind you of a difficult year? If our biology relies on pruning and forgetting to maintain our intelligence and emotional health, are we outsourcing our biological delete button to the cloud? And if so, how heavy is that digital backpack getting?
That is a fascinating and kind of terrifying question.
It is something to think about the next time you get a notification about a memory from 5 years ago. Remember, your brain's ability to prune, edit, and forget isn't a weakness. It is the absolute gold standard of intelligence. You aren't losing your memory, you are optimizing it. So tonight, when that one awkward moment tries to keep you awake, don't fight the embarrassment. Just ask yourself, what was the weather like that day? Change the channel, save your battery, and go to sleep.
Beautifully said.
Thanks for joining our deep dive today. Keep learning and keep optimizing.